Hey there everybody, this is Sarah and I wanted to welcome you to a technique tutorials video that I'm doing here on Facebook. And today I want to share with you a really easy double embossing technique. So this is one that I've used with layering stamps. You can see on that lotus image here, if I tilt it a little bit, that I've got not only some blue embossing on here as well as some gold embossing. It's a really easy technique to do. So what I'm going to do is stand up, tilt the camera down, and then you'll see my work surface and I can show you the process. So I'm going to stand up and move my camera so that you can see, and then we'll get into the stamping and embossing. So once again, here is that image. So I'm working onto a black cardstock and I'm using the Altenew Lotus stamp. So let me share with you the supplies that I'm working with, and then we can get into the stamping. So first of all, I've got my Lotus Altenew stamps, and you can see here, these are a layering stamp set, which means that you've got different layers of a single image, which you would stamp separately with different ink colors, and then layer that would create a layered effect. So what you would do, for example, with this one is first stamp the silhouette in one color of ink, and then you'll stamp the center image in a second color, and then the third image on top of that with a third color, and then you'll get a really beautiful shaded and dimensional effect. If that sounds complicated, never fear, because Altenew always provides you with a stamp layering guide, and you also have some examples you can see a little bit on the back of the packaging. I tend to keep everything together in one go, just so I have everything on hand. So this is the Lotus stamp set that I'm going to be working with. I'm also going to be stamping onto some black cardstock. So this is just a plain black matte cardstock. I need to have my embossing powders, so I'm using the Altenew Rose Gold and also the Wow, this is the Metallic Blue Ultra High. That's going to be for my blue layer. And along with those, of course, I need some embossing ink, and this is from Altenew. Mine is well used. As you can see, it's getting a little bit grubby, but yours, of course, when it's brand new, will look a lot crisper and cleaner than this one. The other thing that I'm going to be using is my Misty. Now, a Misty is a stamp positioner, and this is just going to make actually positioning all of my elements so much easier because it's going to guide the positioning of my stamp, and I'll show you how that works. So what I'll do is just open up my Misty, and I'm going to put down my black cardstock. So I'm going to pop this down here, and I'm using the magnets to secure this in place. So then this way, I don't have to worry about anything going anywhere. Now the stamps, again, let me pull these over and you can see, I'm going to be using not all three of these elements, but just these two right here. And I'm going to start with this one in the center. And what I'm going to do is just pull this off the liner sheet. Now with clear acrylic stamps, you have two sides. Of course, you have a really smooth side, and then you have the side that's engraved, if you will, or that's dimensional. And this is the image that you'll get. So you want to take that and position it face down onto the cardstock, onto whatever you're going to be stamping onto. And then what I can do is just close this up, and then the stamp will cling. So when I go to close this, of course, it will be in exactly the right place. So what I'll do here, once I've got this on here, is I'm going to take my embossing ink. I'm going to ink this up and then get ready to do my heat embossing. Now, two other really important things I need to have on hand. I need to have something that's going to catch my excess embossing powder, and in this case I just use a piece of scrap paper. I have a lot of it around my studio, so this is going to be what I'm using to catch my excess embossing powder. I also need to have a heat embossing tool, and this is sometimes called a heat gun. This is a little bit like a hairdryer, only not quite. It's a lot more powerful. It's really, really hot. And that blast of air is going to melt my embossing powder on my image, and then I'm going to get a really cool raised effect. So I need to have those things on hand as well. So I'm going to take this embossing ink, and then I'm just inking up my image. So I'm just going to tap this on here. Make sure and put the lid back on straight away, and then close this up and press gently. Now when I lift this off, you're not really going to see anything because it's clear ink on the dark paper, but when I open this up and then sprinkle on my blue embossing powder, you'll see and I tap this off, that the embossing powder has stuck to all of the areas of that wet ink. Now you'll also notice I've got some little stray little granules on here. So I kind of tap this off gently and whisk away any of those. You can use your finger. You can also use, I always like to keep on hand a dry paintbrush, and you can also come in here and kind of whisk away any little bits that you may have. I'm not too worried about the outside edge because I know I want to cut this out, so I can leave this as it is. So then the next thing I'm going to do is take this excess embossing powder. I'm going to move my MISTI out of the way and grab this embossing powder jar, and then I can just funnel this right back into the jar so nothing goes to waste. Before I get that heat tool though, I do definitely want to put the lid back on the jar. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is heat set this. It won't take very long. I'm not going to be talking because it's a little bit noisy with the embossing tool. So hang on just a sec while this melts. Okay, so all of the embossing powder has melted, and now I've got a raised and shiny image. And if you could touch it, you would be able to feel that it is also raised. So this worked out perfectly. Now I could use this as it is, but I do want to add that second layer of embossing. So once again, I'm going to bring back in my MISTI. I'm going to take off of this stamp. I'm done with that one. But what I'll do here is reposition this. And it doesn't have to be in the exact same place it was before. This is fine. Just need to make sure that it's down here securely. And then I'm going to take the next layer. So I'm going to do 2 layers. So I'm going to grab this one here. And once again, just peel this off the backing sheet. Now, again, I need to use that detail area, and I need to position this where it will layer over the original image. So this is where the stamp positioner really comes in handy, because I can put this down and then kind of wiggle it around to make sure that I've got it in the right place. Usually I do this standing up, but I have to sit down for filming the video, so I think I'm getting it in the right place, but we will see. So I just need to position that where I want it to go. You can see where it would be harder to do this without the MISTI. And then close this up. Once again, this is clinging on here. And then I'm going to ink this up again with my embossing ink pad and close. So same process as before. Now this time what I'll do is take this, and again I'm taking out my gold embossing powder. I'm going to sprinkle this on here, tap off the excess, and you can see here that I've got that gold on here. Now once again, I'm just going to move this aside and put the lid on my embossing powder and move that to the side too. I'm going to set aside my MISTI as well, and then same process as before, just come in and do a little bit of brushing away if I have any excess bits. But once again, I'm not terribly worried about what's going on around the outside edges because I know I'm going to trim around this image. So let me come back in with my embossing tool. And then you can see I have my double embossed image. So when I'm done, I will have something that looks like this. And so I've just trimmed around the outside edge. I've done some fussy cutting, if you will, using scissors, the old-fashioned way to trim around that beautiful image. And then I've popped it up onto some foam tape, and that gives a little bit more dimension on here too. Now the stamping down here at the bottom, this has been stamped and embossed with black embossing powder, and this is from the Painted Sentiments stamp set also from Altenew. So this is how you can do double embossing with layering stamps. I really hope you enjoyed this technique tutorial. Thanks again so much for joining me today, and I will see you again next time.